Good day, boaters. Keith McGowan here. I am the Outboard Dad, here to help you have a better boating experience. Today, we're going to go deeper measuring this block. We want to make sure we get all of our facts together before we order any parts. The other thing I like about taking the time and being diligent through this process is that you find things that you may not have seen before. So you want to make sure, as we're measuring, I'm looking at those cylinders. Is there any cracks in the cast iron? Remember, today's video is brought to you by the Ansel MR500 diagnostic tool. We need these diagnostic tools for these newer motors with all these sensors. I wish they had one for this old OX66 because it's got some sensors on it too, but unfortunately they didn't have it back then. But if you have a 2002 or newer 4-stroke outboard or an HPDI Yamaha outboard, the Ansel MR500 is a plug and play. Now, I have a few videos to teach you how to turn it on, how to program it, hook up the Wi-Fi, because I'm a mechanic, man. I need to know from square one how does things work and how to use it. A lot of times people show you, yeah, check out this tool. I plugged it in, I got this, I got that, and it's really cool. But how do you get it working out of the box? So watch those videos on the Ansel MR500, and today we'll continue measuring this block. And we're gonna start with the bad cylinder. Now, I went through the rest of them, and they're all within the specs they need to be. A lot of guys won't even measure. They'll just say, well, there's no scoring, I put new rings in, and they'll go out and run and they'll be fine. You may have some differences in compression, right? I've had a lot of motors come to me, yeah, it was rebuilt 2 years ago or rebuilt 4 years ago. Take a compression test. Why am I 125, 125, 125, 130, 110? Is that bad? And then scope the cylinder. I can see the hash marks from the machining and everything. So what did they do? Did they not measure well? Was the cylinder out of round and had hot spots that they just took the hot spots out when they honed, or they just ball honed? Or did they not get deep scratches in there so the oil can hold in those cylinders? A lot of guys will use a hone that's a spring-loaded or a ball hone to take the glaze off. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not putting that down. You can get back out on the water and those engines will run. Me, I was taught by a few old-timers the purpose for those crosshatch marks. And the reason you do proper machining is because you want to hold the oil on the cylinder wall. Not only is it longevity, but it's going to give you better compression and it's going to run better because that's the way it was designed by the manufacturer. So we always seek to know what the knowledge is from the creator. As we build these engines, the better we can make them last longer and have more fun out on the water. That's what this is about, to have engines that are reliable. We're going to get into maintenance over this winter, winterizations we're going to talk about this winter, and we're going to go through that process and why it's so important to maintain your outboard, because you want to have fun on it. Yeah, you're going to have to work on it, especially the old 2-strokes. The new 4-strokes are really nice. I'm going to be doing some more videos on those as well, so it's pretty cool. But let's get back to what we're talking about with this rebuild. Hash marks on the cylinder wall, ring gaps, all these things have to be measured. Now, you don't have to. Let me rephrase that. And plenty of guys will tell you, I re-ringed my motor. I only had one bad cylinder. I took it to the machine shop. I just had them do the one cylinder, and it runs fine for 10 years. I'm not saying you can't, okay? You tell me your opinion of what you've done and what's worked for you. Because what I can tell you is over the 40 years I've been working on engines and rebuilding motors, I've gotten the best longevity out of making sure I have good hash marks, not just the ball hone breaking the glaze. It will last for some time, but the old timers taught me, even if you're not boring that cylinder, if you're just putting new rings in, you can go in with the 100 grit, get some good scratches in there, and still only take off maybe not even 1/4 of a thousandths, maybe you sacrifice 1 psi of compression and maybe 1 or 2 horsepower, but you're going to have longevity out of that engine, and that's what I look for when I do my rebuilds. There's also specs in books, and then there's specs from the piston manufacturer on all. So you have to consider all of these things when you're building your engine, because one thing goes wrong and it could be a catastrophic failure. So let's take a look at that bad cylinder now. We'll get a little deep inside here, and I'll see if I can get my flashlight in there so you can see what it looks like, and then we'll measure before we even start to bore it a little bit. Let's check it out. Okay, so as we take a look inside here, you can see the scoring that's inside this. As I look deeper, I don't see any cracks. I don't see any chunks out of the ports, right? Sometimes you get a chunk out of the ports. You can see there's plenty of metal around this, really not a lot of corrosion on this motor in these areas. Now there is some right here you can see, but that's not bad enough. I still got a good amount for my gasket to seal off. There's a little more corrosion here. My main concern is around my cylinder walls. This is what's going to take the most abuse, all the pressure and everything. This is really just water jackets. And they could be JB welded if you wanted to. This is not enough for me to do that. Maybe in 10 years it may need that again. And if it's flushed properly and everything, it should be okay. And the other side's even better. So let's take a look at this and let's get our dial bore gauge in here. And if you remember, we set up our dial bore gauge for standard piston size. We know we're most likely going to have to bore this out at least 10 over. But let's see what our gauge shows. Let me get my camera back so you can see the gauge here. And let's see what this shows. If you remember the other ones, we were at 4 thousandths, right? And this one, this looks to be about 7.5 thousandths right there. Let's see what this one is. Right, this one's 6 thousandths. Interesting how the first one was smaller. And then go down a little deeper, right? We're at like 7 thousandths. So the only way I'm going to know for sure, let's go down a little deeper just to check and see what we're getting. That's around 8 thousandths, just like we had on the other one. Then we'll go all the way down the bottom now. See what we're getting here. It's about 7.5 thousandths. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get our 100 grit stones out, and we're going to just do some light boring on this. Now, it's a honing stone. I'm going to show you the tool, how it's used, and how I've been taught to use it, because we're going to use it a little differently than what it may have originally been intended to use for. We're going to do this dry to start with, because when I do this dry, I can remove more material faster. When I get into the finer honing, that's when we start to oil them up. We're going to go through this process step by step. So let's get started and clean this up. Sometimes when you start boring or start honing with that 100 grit, little cracks will come up that you didn't realize, and then it's hold it, stop. It's either time to sleeve this or maybe even move on from it and not do a rebuild on it. So let's get started. Okay, so this is what I use. This is a Sunnen, beat up, right? It's been used for many years. I've gotten lots of miles out of this tool. So it's a Sunnen Hand hone that we're going to use a 1/2 inch variable speed drill. This way I have control over the drill. It's the same head, right? The top of this, or the head of this that gets the stones in it, is the same head that's on the $25,000 honing machine that goes up and down automatically. You're just doing the work yourself. So we're going to put some 100 grit stones in here first, and we're going to just clean this up and see what it looks like. So let's get ready. So before we start going to town on this, I want to discuss what we're doing, why we're doing it. You'll always see me or hear me ask the question, why? Why are we doing it this way, right? There's got to be reasoning behind what we're doing. So if you look, I have an old glaze breaker, right? I used to use this with small engines many, many years ago when I used to rebuild lawnmower engines. Now you just buy new stuff because it's just not worth it. So this glaze breaker has been in this package for a long time. Actually, I need to spray a little oil on it. It's probably starting to get a little flash rust. So a lot of you have seen this before. Has some stones on there that are not heavy grit stones. I don't know, if I had to guess, I'd say maybe they're 200 grit, something like that. But there's not a lot of pressure on this either, right? So it's just enough to break the glaze and put some crosshatch in that cylinder wall. This works, and I know plenty of guys who have used these kind of tools, get their motors back out on the water. I don't know the longevity personally as far as an outboard goes. Lawnmower engines is good enough for. Lawnmower engines, a lot of them only have a aluminum sleeve anyway, so you don't want to make too deep of scratches in them as opposed to the cast iron. So we have an aluminum block, but it has a cast iron sleeve in it. So again, you can do this and you can get your motor running. I just don't think it's as good as you can do with the Sunnen Hand hone. So let me show you the difference This is a little spring-loaded tool, right? So it's only going to put minimal pressure. And you're kind of done after you do that. You just kind of put the motor back together. And again, on certain motors, you could probably do that and it would probably work. So what I have here is I have some Sunnen honing stones. And then if you look, I have them labeled, right? This says straight, if you can read my chicken scratch. So I have lots of different stones, right, from different manufacturers. I have some that are really, really rough, even have some broken pieces off of them. So what I use these for is I save them. So my straight ones, and I'm going to tell you what I mean by straight, I keep for stuff like this where I'm just looking to clean it up a little bit. Whereas these rough ones I use when I have a really bad engine failure with some chunks out of it, and I want to know if it's even worth it to do anything or not. I'm going to take like 30 thousandths off really fast with this, and I don't care if the stones break or anything. I'm not worried about making it perfectly straight. I just need to clean it up and measure to make sure the sleeve is even worth repairing. So this one I know is because, or I'm pretty confident it is, because it's minimal damage. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my first set of stones here. I'm going to use my straight ones last. I'll explain how that works. And we'll go ahead and start off. So what happens is the stones go in here. I'll show you how that works. I'm going to put these aside. This is just an extension so I can put it on my drill. Let's see. So in here I have my 200 grits, getting a little faded. I should probably write that on there again. And as you can see, these stones are really oily, and you know, these boxes used to be cardboard color, brown. And then I have my 300 grit here. So that's my final honing. I've had these stones for years because you're really not taking off a lot of material. You're just getting that last quarter of a thousandths off, and you're taking that from 100 grit, right? So my 100 grit does a groove in the cylinder wall. I'm being dramatic with the size, right? But if you put a microscope on it, it's going to give deep scratches, that 100 grit. Now, if I have these peaks, right, and valleys in that cylinder wall, then I'm going to take my 200, I'm going to knock those off, and I'm going to have a flat surface but still have the valleys. And I'm in top of that flat surface, I'm going to have scratches from the 200. Then I'm going to take the 300, knock it down even further, but I still have scratches that are inside those surfaces for my rings to ride on somewhat of a flat top with still having those scratches in there for the oil to hold in. So that's the theory behind how these engines work, how the engineers designed them. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 100 grit in, and let's do a little bit of boring. Sometimes boring can be boring. So I'm going to go ahead and take my Sunnen Hand hone. Now I'm putting this in a certain way, right? I'm putting it in with my grooves facing towards the center because that's going to line up. I'll show you real quick. So when I put this in here, that's going to line up with this so that I can move it in and out, right? Right, so I can move that in and out. I can have that control. So that one goes in that way. Actually, it goes in the other way. My other one goes, so now this is going to turn this way when it goes in the cylinder. And the other one goes opposite because it has to line up with that, with the grooves that go in there. And then I have two sides that are actually just guides, right? It's just a soft aluminum that's going to wear with the stones, right? So we want that to go in there also with my groove so it lines up with the inside. And we're going to take the other side and do the same thing. Whoops. So now all my stones are in place. I'm going to hold them like that so they're all closed in all the way and push this in. And now if I turn this, let's see if I can hold it and turn it at the same time, you can see how it goes out, right? So I can adjust this and I can put pressure and start to really bore. So let's get this close to where we need to be for our cylinder, right? And you'll look at the top of this, how it has a lock. So it has a lock there. So now it won't move. So I can adjust it, right, out to where I want it to be. right? I can adjust it out to where I want it to be, and then I push it down, and it locks in place. And now I have this, which I push down, and I turn it, and it just slowly brings it out, so I can get that fine-tuned pressure on there, right? So if I put this in now, I'm a little bit too big. Let me bring it down. And I expand it to the cylinder, and then I turn this. See, now it can move in there freely, but as I turn this, see, now it tightens against it, right? So I can get it tight. Now I don't want it too tight to start with. I'm going to put my extension on, and we're going to hook up our drill. Just realized you missed that. Let me show you that again. I'll bring the camera in here so you can see a little better. So what I did was, I got this so it fits inside there. And now, once this is down all the way and locked in, it still moves a little bit. So I turn this, and now see it squeezes it tight, right? So I can get it a little bit tight. I don't want to go too crazy, right? Now I can put my extension in, because I'm not looking to take off a crazy amount of material to begin with. I want to clean it up a little bit, stop and check it. So now we're going to go ahead and hook it up to our low-speed Harbor Freight special, very expensive drill. And then let's plug in. I'm just going to take off a little bit. Now I want to make sure I'm in forward. Now if you can hear it, it kind of shoop, 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 right? Because it's at a round, it has aluminum in there, you know, it's kind of rough right now. So I just want to go easy, all the way down the bottom. Now I'm going to tighten it a little bit, because I want to take a little more off. See how I just turned it a little bit. And you'll feel, you have to be careful with the drill because you don't want it to kick around on you, but you'll feel it's going to be tighter. Now you see the dust coming off of it. Typically if I'm doing a lot of this, I'll put my dust mask on for sure. But for right now, let me show you the difference here, what the block looks like or what that cylinder looks like to start with. So as you see down inside here now, you can see I still have some deep scratches up and down from that piston, but the rest of it is starting to clean up pretty evenly. So we have to keep going until there's no scratches left. Now let's see where we're at. I do like to clean it before I put my bore gauge in there, because I don't want all those little pieces of grit and everything getting in my dial bore gauge and throwing it off. So you'll see me wipe it out each time. Now let's see, if you remember we were at 8 thousandths, so let's see where we're at now. Oh, we're at 9 thousandths. So we took 1 thousandths off with that. So we're probably definitely going to go at least 10 over, but I think the piston kit is probably a 20 over. But I do see I didn't remove anything at all on this one side. So we're going to keep going until we have no scratches left in it. If there's a small, really blip, it's not a big deal. But if it's a line the whole way, it has to be completely removed. So let's keep boring. I can feel that I don't have all of it off yet because it's, you know, it's not smooth yet. So yeah, I could see I still have a lot more to go here. But we'll measure again. Just like to keep measuring as we go forward. Now, definitely left scratches in here, and I'll show you when we get it turned around. So I'm at 10 thousandths there, so I'm going about a thousandth at a time. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my mask on because it's getting kind of dusty.
Now we're protected.
Now we're protected.
Too tight.
Okay, so starting to look good now. But as you can see, right here, right, we still have a spot. So that's got to get, that looks like I can barely feel it now, maybe another thousandths. All the scratches up and down here are gone. There's another spot on this side, but really it's just right there. So let's measure and see where we're at now. So we're pretty sure a 20 over should be no problem with this. Let's see what our gauge shows. Shows we're at 12 thousandths, so we took 2 thousandths off that time. Went a little bit harder at it. Now if you notice, I did spend a lot of time in the bottom of the cylinder, and I'll explain why. So next what we're going to do is I'm going to flip those stones over. So I'll bet you, and let's measure, how much you want to bet? I'll bet you the bottom of the cylinder, if I'm 12 at the top, I'll bet you the bottom is no more than 10. And why is that? Because it's what they call a blind hole cylinder. I can't drive my honing tool all the way through and all the way out. It stops at the bottom, which means I'm going to take off more at the top than the bottom the more I take off. And it's going to taper. So let's see. You want to bet? Just so you know, I never bet unless I know I'm right, because I'm a tightwad. So let's see what the bottom is. Let's go to the middle first. In the middle, if we were, let's see, we were 12, right? We were 12 at the top. I go down about an inch. I'm still 12. I go down to the middle, and I'm 11 and a half. And let's go to the bottom. And the bottom is, of course, you can't see it, so you have to go by my word if you trust me. Bottom is 10 and a half. So that means we are 1.5 thousandths larger at the top than the bottom. Now the add around was 0.2 and the taper was 0.3, so we're still within that spec. I want it as straight as I possibly can. So here's what we're going to do. Little trick I was taught. If you remember, I labeled these stones straight, right? Because I have not used these to do major boring. Okay, what does that mean? I'm not taking 20, 30, 40 thousandths off with this because it's going to taper, and then my stones are also going to taper. I save these for just the fine-tuned honing. So now I'm going to take these stones, and this is highly professional. Don't try this at home. And I'm going to flip them in reverse. Gets a little tricky doing this because it can backfire on you. So let's see, I want to go this way and this way with my stones. Flip these over. So now I'm going to run my drill in reverse. And now my stones that were getting worn at the bottom is at the top and the top's at the bottom. So I'm going to hone again in reverse. Now it's not going to, this tool's not designed to work this way. They'll never tell you, the manufacturer will never tell you that. But an old timer taught me, you flip those stones over and then you work it. You can't work it as hard as you can in forward, but you work it and you'll bring your stones back to straight. You'll bring most of your cylinder back to straight if you spend time in the bottom. You're still going to have to work the bottom separately, and I'm going to show you how. I'll show you how right now. So you have a little heads up of what I'm going to do. So I have a set, again, it was another old timer, Windsor machine, great guy, Paul, and he taught me this trick. And I have a set of stones that I modified that only has a stone at the bottom. So I can work just the bottom of the cylinder, and this is the 100 grit, right? So once we get it close, I'm going to get that bottom of the cylinder almost within half to a quarter thousandths of where I want it to be finished before I finish hone. This way, if I can get it back in the box, this way, when I finish hone, right, so I'm going to have the bottom of my cylinder, if I want to be at 6 thousandths, let's say, and I'm probably going to be close to 4.5 to 5 with my 100, and then the inside's probably only going to be 4 at the bottom. Then I'm going to work the bottom out to like 5.5. Now my top is smaller than my bottom. Then I'm going to hone to the bottom. So I'm going to get within 0.5 thousandths with the top. So I'll be at 5.5, the top and bottom will be at 6. Then I'll start to finish hone with my 200 grit because I'm going to get the top, and I'm not going to work the bottom as much. I'm going to work up and down, and I'm going to get within 0.5 or 1/4 thousandths. Then I'm going to put my 300 grit in, and then I'm going to work it straight. So that's how we're going to get these straight. I'm going to finish honing this up to get all the scratches out, and then we'll measure to be sure. But I'm pretty sure we're going to need 20 over pistons, and then it's going to be some research to find the piston that we want, because we're just going to do one piston. All the rest of the cylinders checked out okay, and we're going to start honing with the 100 grit in the next episode. So let me finish this up for you guys, and then we'll plan for that next episode. So remember, we're in reverse now. Okay, let's see how we did with this. So I can see that little side here, and I'll show you, I'll move the camera so you can see, is almost completely gone now. But let's see what our measurements are. So I'm 14.5 up top, 15 in the middle. That happens sometimes too. You don't want to barrel the cylinder either, right? Because I was working down the bottom and not coming all the way out the top because I was trying to get the bottom more, so it's starting to barrel a little bit. And we're at 14 down here, and let's check all the way in the bottom. So if you remember, we were a full thousandth smaller in the bottom. Now we're only half a thousandth smaller. Let's see all the way at the bottom. Gotta get my flashlight so I can see. And we are 14 thousandths at the bottom. So we're already starting to straighten it out, but it's also beginning to barrel a little bit. So we want to be careful. So I'm going to keep them this way in reverse and go at it again. Now if we're at 14 thousandths, and so obviously we would need to go, so if stock is 6 thousandths piston wall clearance, 20 over, we would need to bore this to 26 from what it was, right? From that zero where we're zeroed out. I'm not going to go that far. I want to get around the 20, 22 mark. Probably not even going to go that far. I'm just going to get all the scratches out of it, but then I'm going to get the new piston and measure that to check my piston wall clearance. But we're also going to check with that piston manufacturer and the manufacturer of the rings, because it's going to be the same, to see what they say, because it's not always the same as the original from Yamaha. So let's get this board out the rest of the way. In the next episode, we're going to do that. We're going to get all those scratches out, show you what it looks like, measure it, and then we'll look at ordering parts. So please like, subscribe, send me any comments that you have, and we look forward to seeing you out on the water with your rebuilt motor. Have a great day.